Right. Let's turn the screen back on. Boom, nice and big. All right, everyone. Hey, let's see. Thank you all for coming again. Get this camera up a skosh. Better. All right. Again, we are going to be talking two red blends, California wines, one Apothic, a California appellated wine, and then Pessimist red blend, which is actually all Paso Robles fruit. Um, and I really want to kind of just start off by discussing kind of the different ins and outs of red blends you can see from across the world and really what that means when you're looking at. Hold on. Gotta pull up my notes. I want to have notes. Yeah. First off, thank you all for coming again. A couple new faces. If you do notice the on the top bar here, my this last name up here in red. It's actually my mom. So she I set her up and got her to follow me. So excited for that. Actually, maybe leave a little bit of background music on. Might be nice, except for the ads, because cheap and I don't pay for Spotify. Little background. Turn it up a little bit. All right. Yeah. So starting off, kind of just break down really what a red blend is, and it's one of those wines that there is no legal name for what has to be in there, what could be in there. There's some other subsets of red blends, and we'll get into as we kind of go down the list of areas. So, just starting off in California as a baseline, red blends again can be anything from any area, as long as they say something like red blend in California. Just as red grapes, there could be white grapes in there. Kind of a fun aspect depending on the price point of what you're buying, and that's something to kind of I'll try to touch on at all the little points there. Take a little whiff. I got two of them, two glasses tonight. So I'm be swapping off. And I opened up the Apothic and I just Corvined out. Little degasser pushes out the volume from the bottle, but still keeping the cork intact. So kind of cool device too for wine. So yeah, base red blends again can be anything. There could be little bits of white wine, little bits of rosé wine, and then a bunch of other things to create that. In California, what you're really going to see is fruit from the Central Valley. You're really going to see Syrah, Merlot, Zin, Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot, even Cabernet, other varieties as well, lesser known varieties that could be in these blends. And we'll kind of touch on that with the pessimist when we get there. But I thought something like Apothic, they in their tech sheets that I pulled up, one of the most interesting parts are, they call out Zinfandel, Syrah, Merlot, and Cabernet. There's no, legality to them saying that. I think they're being truthful. I think anyone from a winemaking and or marketing perspective will want to try to at least call out that they're not giving percentages or anything. Obviously, because the second you give percentages on these, it kind of holds you to some kind of legal notes. Um, so I think that lays the groundwork for them to kind of build a nice wine. And Apothic is a $10 bottle wine. It's a very big, plush, oaky, sweet, dark ripe fruit. Kind of. I don't have a great backdrop to kind of show you color here, but looking at it from my end, it says good dark color, not super concentrated or opaque, but you know, hits all the great quality notes from that perspective. And for $10, it's a great bang for your buck when it comes to that. And as we kind of move just into more of a generic thought on California red blends, different producers will have different styles. I know personally, I like to. I've kind of shifted some of my thought process on how I like to create a red blend. Uh, having if you had the pick of the litter when it comes to making some wines, and I always really like Zin as a base and using something like Petite Syrah, Syrah, and even like Petit Verdot. I think they're fun, dark, jammy styles of wine, and those lead to some really fantastic, um, just round red wines that can kind of really pair with some basically anything you want to kind of toss its way. It's can start off the night when you're in the kitchen getting ready. It's great after dinner, during your meal. Round in that sense of it's highly versatile. And I've kind of changed some of the thought processes. I've you know grown up or become a little more educated, or maybe my palate's changed slightly. One of the things I've kind of developed and liked is a lot more like really petite Syrah focused or predominant wines, and that's going to be kind of a fun aspect when we get into the pessimist, and it kind of fits that same style. Just a quick teaser there. Um, the different areas of California in terms of grape growing, most of California appellated red blends you're going to see at a grocery store. They're going to be they're going to be focused in the Lodi-ish area all the way down into where we're at down in Fresno, and then you can find potential pieces from the Central Coast, maybe even the North Coast, um, depending on the producer and really what their price point is. So if you're talking a $10 to $15 price point, you may have some Central Coast influence from that producer putting that blend, giving it some maybe more nuance, or maybe they just have some. It really fit the blend well. So depending on the producer and what their end target is really what they're going to focus there. I'm I'm going to take a leap. I don't work for the producer of Apothic, which is Gallo. I would doubt they put any sort of coastal wine in there, but you never know. I mean, even these big producers, they hold pretty strong to like good ideals uh, in terms of really how they want to craft some blends, and it could easily have some Central Coast fruit and maybe even North Coast. I wouldn't put it past them. Maybe some older vintage items that they're slowly dropping in there. They do have a room from a vintage varietal and appellation standpoint to blend in older pieces, maybe adding some of the structure and palatability to a $10 bottle. Highly possible. But I'm gonna leverage my limited wisdom and think maybe not. So one of the things that I at least find really interesting about Apothic is, it has such a big plush um, body and weight to it, and it has sweetness to it, which is very interesting. But the most interesting part is you don't taste it; doesn't get cloyingly sweet. It is really palatable and good. And make fun of as you are if you're a fairly um, traditional winemaker that I'll take back not cloyingly sweet. It is sweet, but it does still hit you with that big tannin structure and oak behind it to balance that pendulum of palatability. Um, there's some really interesting aspects to it. Um, yeah, no, really, really nice wine. For $10, it again hits everything nice when it comes to what you want to see in a round red blend that you can pair with a steak or some dessert, or just by itself when you're having barbecue chicken salad like I had tonight. Um, Very interesting. There's some very tutti fruity, like almost flavored fruit characteristics to it, and I think that's from some of the more intrinsic winemaking practices that some producers like Gallo have access to and derive on. So you get some of these big, ripe, jammy style, but you have some of this like um, I call it tutti fruity, kind of like your Fruit Loops or Tricks or some of these other um, highly fruity, kind of candied like aspects to it. So that's the only flaw I can find is it just has that imbalance of those flavor and aromatic attributes. So before we get into Pessimists, I'm gonna leave and tease that there. We'll kind of just talk about how is red wine made. Come on, okay, softballs over there, Jeremiah. So unlike, I'll answer this question. It's a great question. How is red wine made? So red wine, all wine is coming from grapes, different grape varietals. Red wines get their appearance and a lot of their flavor from uh, the fermentation on the skins versus most white wines or rosé wines that don't necessarily ferment on the skins because of the color they'll extract from that. Um, Throughout that fermentation process, the color is being leached out in that juice days as it's starting to ferment and soak out the colors or the anthocyanins. And then as you get more alcohol, some of the other tannin and other structural molecules start coming out. Um, and then you press off the skins from that finished wine fermentation. And that gives you your, lot of wine, whether it's a Cabernet, Zinfandel, Pinot Noir. And then when it comes to red blends, there's a couple different modalities and practices that some people may choose um, to to use. Either you can pick and blend the fruit in the fermenter, fermenting on those skins, giving it a little bit more homogeneous approach from the very beginning. Most places are going to be blending in the background. So once the wine is finished fermenting and pressed off into individual pieces, then you can really work on blending, in the lab, actually trying and dosing percentages of this tank of Petite Sirah versus this amount of Zinfandel, and then I have these little bits of, say, Malbec or Verdot, or maybe other interesting varietals like Tannat or Tempranillo, or some other fun things that you may have that may have some interesting characteristics that can help build the palate of the wine and broaden the structure, broaden the fruit profile to be matching your target consumer, matching your personal style. A lot of fun in terms of how you can approach that and what your end target is. So it leaves a lot of wide space to experiment and play around with. So that's that answer in a softball question. Thank you for that. Um, so I kind of give you the breakdown of Apothic, and now some just kind of generic um, aspects of red red wine and red blend aspects in terms of production. And so moving into a kind of a broader sense of how different areas of the world do it, as there's some interesting histories going back. So in areas like France, in Bordeaux, um, the, or in most regions of France and other European countries, they have some interesting laws on, if you're in a specific region. I won't get into the terminology that the French use to classify those regions, but say if you're in Bordeaux, they have approved varietals you can make for a Bordeaux red or Bordeaux white. Um, and Other areas have different requirements on what you can plant and use in the blends. Some areas have, one or two varieties. Some areas have multiple, and many long, arduous lists. So in Bordeaux, um, the most interesting aspect of French Bordeaux's, they can be Cab or Merlot based depending on their region. There's some kind of classic historical aspects they'll make being in those areas, but they can also use Malbec. They can use Cab Franc, um, and they can use Mourvedre is one of the other blending pieces that you can use in some of the reds. And I think there's some other smaller varieties, and I'm not going to get into the deep weeds there. And then when you move to somewhere like the Rhone, there's a different group of varieties that are approved to be used in there, and that's where the Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre blends come from. And then even in the different areas from north to south in the Rhone Valley in France, there's even different stylistic choices that they've made from the north versus the south, where the north being mostly a Syrah-based Rhone style, using some other some more, I'm going to say, local grape varieties or more classic grape varieties that you don't really see in the California viticulture. And then Southern Rhone is your very typical GSM style Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre. And then we've taken a lot of those aspects from French culture and moved them into different areas of the world. Um, Red blends from Italy, Chianti is, you hear Chianti, you think it's a varietal. It's actually not a varietal of red wine or red blend, but it's actually Sangiovese is the base of Chianti. And then different areas of Italy also same have, different areas have the different varietals on which they base their wines off of. The Barolo style of wine is all Nebbiolo grape. And then if you ever hear about super Tuscans, wines coming out of Tuscany, they can be, um, it's allowed in kind of I guess, a more American approach to uh, red blend production in that area of Tuscany, where they're making, they're using Cabernet along with Sangiovese and even maybe some of these other interesting varieties like Dolcetto or that Nebbiolo grape as well, depending on the producer as well. Um, and then when you actually are starting to move to different areas like newer world areas, new world production areas like Argentina and the red wines and red blends they're making out of those spots. Um, the Malbec is one of the biggest players that you're going to hear from Argentina, and um, Malbec being that traditional Bordeaux variety that I just mentioned in France. They're also using Syrah and Cabernet and some other varietals that they plant in very small quantities there. And then Chile is also another interesting producer of red blends, as they have some great aspects of very Chilean in style, but also kind of European in style as well, where they're producing Cabernet, they're producing Merlot and Pinot Noir in different areas as they're more baseline on the Pacific coast there in South America. They also have a very interesting other red grape called Carmenere, a very herbaceous grape, late to ripen in style, but definitely has some interesting qualities to it. And then you can even look at like Australia. They're, in South Australia and the Barossa, they're very Shiraz based or Syrah. They're making GSM style blends as well. And these different newer world regions like California and Australia and Chile and Argentina. They've taken a lot of hints from the French and Italian and looked at the climate regions that they're in and kind of based their viticultural choices in terms of varieties to best match that. And it's changed over the years. I think people have had to do a little experimentation and figuring out what works best. And then as smarter viticulturists come in and better extrapolate what works in these areas, they kind of fine tune those varietals on um, what can work in those climates to best maximize these grapes that go into a red wine blend or even a varietal blend. Uh, yeah, so that's kind of a generic breakdown of what we're working with across the area. And, I got notes on every region, and I just don't want to rattle off a bunch of facts. That's boring. Um, so just touching back on the apothic, again, really great dark fruit characteristics. Fruity, ripe, a lot of oak, a lot of vanilla, a lot of mocha, almost chocolatey, almost um, a mix of like chocolate espresso and vanilla bean. That's kind of on top of the fruit. It's very heavy, but it's very obvious and very simple to pick up and taste. I think that's what a lot of people enjoy about this wine. Um, it's easy to taste and easy to expect and understand the wine. It's not convoluted and doesn't have to boggle your mind. You taste it, tastes great, good to go. And that's why someone like Gallo can sell probably a million cases of this year. That's a very interesting aspect to this. Is this huge mega brand that is in every liquor store, every retail chain, probably across the United States and probably beyond. And they've even expanded into um, different subset versions of this, being a really inky dark version that's so opaque it looks like almost purple black. They have another version called Crush. They have varietal versions, a Merlot, a Cabernet, a Pinot Noir. They have rosé now. They have sparkling versions of this now. So they've really expanded their footprint on this one individual SKU that I think a lot of people can taste and adapt to and really enjoy. If you can get past the sweetness, that is. They even have a coffee version, and I bet there's probably even going to be a cannabis version of this in the future, where it's going to be a de-alcoholized wine with CBD or some other fun aspect to it, which is a whole different segment in the future. Not too shabby. So jumping into a different thought process when making a red one, and for a producer like Dow who makes Pessimist, they're going to take a different approach to blending and crafting this wine. It is a much darker base wine. Um, just looking over from the light behind me and going over my wife's computer that's in front of me, it has the HP logo on it, and if I just put the wine glass over it and even extend it out, it totally blocks it out. Can't see it. The other one you can translucently see right through it. So uh, much more concentrated color, much more concentrated fruit aromatics, and that's the interesting part of that. It is $25, maybe 19 at certain retail shops. So it is two and a half, 2 to 2.5 the price. But as I kind of get into the profile and how they're producing that, it's going to show why that cost goes up. First off, it is a Paso Robles appellated wine, so at least 85% of this fruit has come from the Paso Robles region. And then they're using in their notes on their website 62% Petite Sirah, 20% Zin, 60% Syrah, and then 2% of a very interesting grape variety. I'm not going to get the details of it, but Legrine. I can never enunciate it properly, but interesting, very dark concentrated red grape variety. You can Google it, do your own research there. Maybe I'll do a in-depth day on just varietals and where they come from and where they're grown, some other stuff like that. Maybe another episode one day. And one fun thing about this that I really like is because the aromatic profile is such big blueberry, boysenberry aspects, but also has some like floral aspects. And I would presume it's probably that combination of Petite Sirah and Zinfandel, giving it a lot of just jump out of the glass dark fruit from that Paso Robles region. It's going to make some really great concentrated red wines to be blended. Yeah, it's very similar on the palate. It actually has kind of a tart cranberry on the palate, along with that blueberry. Very interesting. It's the oak on the wine is um, you know kind of pronounced, but very underneath all that great big dark fruit. And that's one thing that I thought was very interesting, and much drier, obviously, because it's a less sweet wine. I'm going to say there's probably some residual sugar that they kind of played around with, but not to the level of Apothic. And Apothic being something like 20-ish grams per liter of fluid in a bottle of wine um, that's probably like 16 total grams of sugar within that bottle. So it's a good amount of sugar to be placed in there. The pessimist, actually tasting on side by side, actually has this bittersweet chocolate finish. So you get that bitterness, but it has a touch of sweetness. Kind of follow it up. very round and ripe. The tannins are fairly young and kind of almost a minty tannin to it, probably from some of the extraction of something like Petite Syrah or even Syrah from that area that can have some kind of herbaceous aspects, and they're fairly difficult varieties to grow. Petite Syrah, very interesting variety because it's such a tight cluster of fruit. When it ripens, it just kind of keeps itself so in such a tight small sphere that all the berries are just tight and pressing up against each other. There's very little impact from anything else. So it's difficult to manage because as it ripens, it can actually burst itself and cause rot and some other issues. So you have to really manage some different watering aspects when it comes to your viticultural plays there. I'm going to do a quick little refresh here. My screen kind of got lost here. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, so pessimist. There's a really great amount of nuanced oak to it, and I don't want to say they're going to be using barrels in this. I highly doubt they are because it is so minimal and light. Check my glass. It's easy to find which one's which because they're so dark. There's some nice barrel oak to it, but it is so bright in fruit that I don't think it saw any sort of long-term oak barrel aging. I'm gonna go with, because of their tech sheet on these wines, and most wineries provide tech sheets on their websites. One fun fact is, I'll actually pull it up on where you can find these guys. It's pretty interesting because you can dive into the details of any of these wines. Let me flop my screen real quick. So this is Dow's website. I'm actually gonna back up one more screen. So from their beautiful manufactured website that someone put together, made really nice. They give you some kind of basics right here. These basics give you those kind of aspects that the winemaker or the group of winemakers puts together to give you kind of their impressions of these wines. Very interesting, basic, but they give you the blend information. They're actually giving you the dead percentage of it, so that they're really holding true to that. Not on the label. That's another interesting thing. They're just calling it red blend on the label, so there's no legality of any of this blend right here. But if I really ever really want to see some details, usually if you scroll down to the bottom of a website, there's usually a button down here that says trade. In there, it's basically a background info site that has everything on how a distributor or salesperson for a place that maybe buy this wine can find intimate details on. And I can actually go through here and find the 18 and the 19. Maybe look at that in a second, but it'll actually pull this up. Now I have, maybe even a PDF tab over here with tech sheets where it pulls up a little bit more information, maybe just a expanded version of info they want to give out to the crowd. And because in this tech sheet, I'm not finding any reference to time spent in barrel, new barrel equivalent. I'm going to go with they didn't do that. So they don't want to put that information out there and potentially uh, be disingenuous to the consumer. So I'm going to go with they probably went with some sort of oak adjunct in tank, or maybe in the different pieces of this blend. Maybe some of these smaller pieces like Syrah, or maybe some of the Petite Syrah saw barrel time. Maybe they did. I wouldn't doubt it. Maybe the whole thing did. If it did, they did a really subtle job of doing it. So kudos to them in terms of a production level. Um, Maybe they use something like large scale oak tanks or puncheons or some large vessel that has very little impact. in terms of the surface area to that wine. It's one way to kind of give it some age and give it some concentration, some nuance to that blend, but isn't such a high impact to the grapefruit that's in this wine. So that's a fun little, I would say insider secret, but maybe something that no one ever saw, or maybe sees at the bottom of the website that doesn't really fully understand what it is. But there's some wineries actually use that and have a ton of detail in there versus a website, which could be um, can be kind of misleading or trying to be vague in a way. So it gives you that little breakdown there. So there's that little aspect. Even Apothic has one. They don't give a detailed aspect of it, but they give some basic tasting notes. Very simple. And this statement product is probably something that they crafted up for the whole brand. Can't see that. Hold on, let me move this bad boy real quick. There we go. Move that up. So now you can see what that is. They probably crafted this statement through their marketing team or something to say this is kind of what we shoot for every year. We're going to build a blend off that. That's the mission statement of the wine. Probably very true for a huge brand like that and how they um, go about that business. Now, go back over here. So when it comes to weighing these two and evaluating, what am I tasting? What are the differences there? There's some pretty good differences. The sweetness is going to be the biggest thing that you're going to find that's different between these ones. The Apothic is almost syrupy smelling in terms of the ripeness. It's not off-putting. It works pretty well. It's so broad and oaky and dark and fruit on the nose that it really does give you some. Uh, it kind of makes it interesting. Kind of brings you in to smell more and taste it. Very concentrated in terms of that oak, dark fruit. Does have that like spicy white pepper aspect to it, um, which is nice, but it is very sweet. It has this almost quasi dessert wine without being so syrupy porty that it doesn't put you off, and you can keep drinking more. Maybe you'd be done after a glass. Maybe you can drink the whole bottle. That one's up to you. But for $10, that is a nice wine that I think they built a you know huge machine off of this production. And it really does work. It is what they say it is. It is rich and smooth. That's dead center on the bottle. Pull that one up for you. Rich and smooth. They hit the target there, that's for sure. So they've really dialed that in for $10, or I think it was $10.99 retail. Maybe you can get it $9.99 or $8.99. That hits everything that is fantastic about a red blend. The Pessimist, $25. Such a different profile for being that petite Syrah, that blueberry boysenberry, almost like a boysenberry syrup you put on pancakes if you really are wild. Really, really fun. Big in tannin. I definitely do want to be famous. Thank you, U2 2013.2332. Gotta love bots that jump in chats and kind of give you some fun commentary. Um, the Pessimist though, it's $25. It's two and a half x, the price of the Apothic. If at certain stages in my life, I would definitely go for that Apothic for sure. At the stage I'm at right now, I probably still would. I'm saying it. I'm saying it here. I probably still would go with something like Apothic. While the Pessimist is a great wine, it's going to lend itself to more specific meals because of the the richness and the concentration to it. Having that with a big dinner, a hearty dinner, that's going to be great for it. It can really handle some of the um, a big meaty steak. It can handle barbecue. It can handle actually be really great with pizza. Now I'm thinking about it, and I really just want pizza. I think it's definitely fun in that regard. Sitting on its own, it's a great wine. It's great post-dinner wine. Maybe the second bottle of the night. It's good to start off. It's good to have it follow something else because it is a little bit heavier, bigger structure, but it is soft and palatable. But the finish is that cocoa powder or bittersweet chocolate finish that is very has that drying nature to it from a more structured, round Paso Robles red blend. Um, I'll probably leave these remainders here and actually test the analysis when I'm back at work, where I have a massive laboratory that can run all the fun analysis I ever want on any of these wines at my fingertips. And it's always a nice insight there to kind of show like what's in the guts of that wine and how maybe the producers finish the wine in terms of the production aspects. As you know, we don't as a winemaker, you don't generally try and leave sugar in there because leaving sugar in your fermentation keeps you open to spoilage and other detrimental aspects to the aromatic and flavor attributes. Um, we add sugar back though. That's a fun aspect to that style. And that apothic red, being as sweet as it is, it definitely has some sugar added back, but it works and it's really great for it. I can't be too angry about it, and I want to be, want to, I want to, hate the wine, but damn, they did a great job, and I really got to give it to them. Yeah, that's kind of all I had for tonight. Just kind of quick synopsis there. I am taking recommendations for what's a question that maybe you want answered next time, and I can bring some wine out to kind of highlight and showcase if anyone has any questions on a specific varietal, a specific. I wish I could do a poll on here. I probably could, um, but I'm not gonna figure out why you're on here because I'm just gonna be staring at the screen like a dodo bird. Yeah, there's probably some poll thing in here, but um, if anyone has anything they want to talk about or has questions about, do that now. But hey, I want to say thank you for joining in. Thank you to all 7 of you followers. Actually, one of them is also me. I have my phone up on this as well, so buffering some stats on here. So there's probably 3 real people in here, 4. Uh, so thank you guys for joining in. If you don't have any fun aspects, I was thinking about doing a Cabernet. Cabernet is king in California and most of the world in terms of red varieties. Um, I might want to do a white variety next. I think that'd be interesting in terms of actually trying to go back and forth between white and red varieties, but I got to mix in some rosé at some point. It's getting warm, so rosé might be fun. In terms of a light beverage, and there's